Hi and welcome to Simply Ballers 2024-2025 season previews. It's that time of the year where for the next 30 days I'll be releasing a season preview for each team. In each preview there will be a quick season and off-season recap. Then following that we'll be looking at what's in store for each team. We'll be looking at some of the key questions that they have, some of the positives, some of the negatives. It will be digging deeper in some of those areas. And at the end there are some final thoughts with prediction of the standings, their floor, their ceiling, some of the playoff chances and some other fun predictions. So today we're going through the Phoenix Suns, and after locking themselves up into a roster that was expensive, very top heavy, having very little option and flexibility to improve, this was quite a disappointing season for them, and there is no other way to spin this. They were all in on this core when they decided to trade for Bradley Beal and his massive contract, and the thing they have to show for it is a first round exit. This team wasn't a team that could have been dominant in the regular season. This also wasn't a team that could have made a deep run. This wasn't a team that could also win a playoff series, and actually this wasn't even a team that could win a playoff game. That's disappointing when it comes to just the players that they had, the choices that they made last off season, and they couldn't get a single win out of this. Health played a part, but I'm not sure how much that explains this. Beal did play only 53 games and he had the health issues with his back even after coming back. That does make the chemistry harder to develop, but then that still doesn't excuse the kind of playoff series that they had, and it still doesn't excuse that they had Kevin Durant play 75 games, which was the most since 2019. They had Devin Booker play 68 games, Grayson Allen played with 75, Eric Gordon with 68, and Jusuf Nurkic with 76. And yet they still couldn't even hit 50 wins. This very top heavy team was led by the best players playing a lot of games, and they couldn't have success then. They couldn't even have success in the playoffs, and I just don't see how that was even possible. Like, I do feel like the season was kind of underrated, even by me just talking about it. They were 8th in 8 net rating, had the 9th best offense, and were 12th on defense. That's a team that was almost top 10 on both ends of the floor, despite the concerns that everyone was making with Jusuf Nurkic coming in with the lack of depth, and they still didn't win a single game in the playoffs. And that's inexcusable. There's way too much top end talent, and still having decent enough role players that should have been good enough on both ends of the floor to make any series a competitive series. And even with both Booker and Durant on, they were minus 8.2 in over 156 minutes with a 110.8 offense against the Wolves. A minus 18 net with two top 15 players playing like top 10 players in the playoffs, and they were still struggling offensively, despite them both having good series themselves. Their offseason was quiet, which was probably expected, and is very quiet compared to what they did last year. But there wasn't anything else that they could have done. They brought back Royce O'Neal, Josh Okogie, Bol and Damon Lee. They did end up losing Eric Gordon and Drew Eubanks, but they still added a few rookies and getting two guys in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris. So now the biggest change in the offseason wasn't the players, it was the coaching, their coaching. They had Frank Vogel last year. Now they're bringing in Mike Budenholzer, who should help them a lot, especially with the defensive end. Although he had the personnel with Giannis and Brook, he still deployed a good enough system consistently to be a good defensive team. So there are ways to make all of this improve on both ends of the floor. So what's in store for the Suns this year? Will their top 3 players play more together? Are they going to be horrid in the fourth quarter again? Can Durant continue to be his top 10 usual self, particularly on the defensive end? What can we expect from Booker after his Olympic run, where he showed so many good flashes, especially in a very different role? Will we see Beal bounce back to an All-NBA level talent? How is he going to mesh with everyone else? How do we still feel about Nurkic going forward with them? What changes will Budenholzer bring? How can their offense be better in the playoffs? Can we see a change in a shot diet, change in with upping up the 3-point volume, and we'll finally get in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, make a difference for them? Because that's what we heard all year long, where they needed a point guard. So now they got 2 decent point guards. Will that make a difference for them? The most important question is, how much of the top 3 will we see them together? Both Durant and Booker played a lot of games. Durant hasn't played these many games since 2019. Is it fair to assume that they will repeat that? We already had health concerns and sample size with them last year. Is it fair to assume that all of them will play even more games, or at least at the same level as they were this year? That's in itself an issue. But when it comes to the on-court discussion, they were still very successful, even with all the chemistry stuff, even with Beal having to get integrated in it. They were plus 6.7 in over 800 minutes with a 123 offense. They had a 60% effective field goal, 63% true shooting. That was just stupidly good. And that improves to plus 9.1 in with a 126 offense when you add Jusuf Nurkic. And all of their three players did their thing. Booker averaged 27 points per 75 on 60% effective field goal, 63% true shooting with a 27% usage. Durant averaged 22 points, which is kind of weird seeing him at that kind of volume on 60% true shooting with 24% usage. Beal added 18 points on 66% true shooting with a 90% usage. So there was some decrease in both Durant and Beal's usage, but they were still all very efficient. They worked well together, and yet the offense still didn't work in the playoffs. They had issues in the fourth as well all season long. In the fourth, they had a worse offense at 105.1, and a lot of that had to do with them having a 16% turnover percentage. But if you look at the top trio together in the fourth, they were still plus 0.6 in a very small sample of 188 minutes with 117 offense. That's still down, but it's not terrible, and it's not something that is a issue with them. Even just playing around with some of the lineups, it does look like Nurkic was key in their success. With Jusuf Nurkic on, they were plus 3.8 with a 116 offense in 371 minutes, and you take him off, they dropped to minus 18 with a 102 offense in 633 minutes. That shouldn't be that bad. They shouldn't be that dependent on Jusuf Nurkic. They have the top end talent to not get outscored by 18 points per 100 possession without Jusuf Nurkic. And for all that to happen, those players need to continue just to play at the level that they did. That could happen. There have been signs of just already when it comes to just both Booker and Durant, especially when it comes to Durant. Then that leads me to another question for him this year. So when it comes to Durant, he's already defined logic, and it looks like just the father time is not catching up to him. He just continues to play on an elite level. He continues to do what he does as well as he's ever done. He's in the same boat as LeBron, where you think you see him decline, you think you see some of the differences in his game, and he just comes back better in other areas. Many thought that after his injury in 2019, there will be significant declines, and for every decline and drop off that he has in athleticism and his speed, his rim pressure, he just made up for it elsewhere. He's still a knockdown shooter from 3-point, making over 41%. He still casually shoots 56% from 2, but there still has been declines everywhere else, particularly when it comes to his on-ball scoring. Here are his isolations efficiency since 2021. This year was at 0.94, last year was at 0.12, then it was at 1.10, 1.18. So he's already having a career low, lowest since 2021. This is the first time he's been not shooting below 1 point per possession. His pick and roll was at 1.00, down from 1.19 last year, 1.04 in 2022, and 1.01 in 2021. His post up was at 0.89, handoffs 0.86. The only thing that was coming up was his off-ball ability. His off-screen was at 1.15, the best since 2021. His pull-ups was at 1.16, third best since 2021. All of those levels, when it comes to just the off-ball ability, they're just as efficient. But he hasn't had the same scoring when it comes to just creating for himself. It's not KD like to shoot sub 50% effective field goal on any of his self-creation, whether it was in post-ups, pick and roll, or in isolation. That is a worry. If he can't just be that kind of KD when it comes to just his on-ball creation, then that does change things, because that is one of the main reasons why he's been so effective so far. Because he would have still been able to just score at will whenever he wants, and we're already seeing a decline like that. Because that then means that other people have to have more responsibilities. You can't rely on KD to effectively score at a high frequency as well. That means Booker or Beal has to take that part. And we also saw, especially in the Olympics, that a lot of those players are maximised off ball. I think all of those players right now at their stage of career, even with Book, they are all better off-ball players. They are better just making decisions without it. They are better decision makers and more efficient, just doing what they want without the ball. They are just efficient, without dominating it. But without KD being effective in isolation, in the pick and roll, in the post-ups, someone has to do it. Booker is good at it. He is efficient. He has been showing improvements. But when it comes to just his ideal role where he's maximized, we saw that in the Olympics, where the role that he thrives in just is that off-ball ability. He's already in the top 15, top 20 range for me. But can we see maybe him just embracing that on-ball role and just take charge and just be the engine of the offense? He was already leading the team in touches and was the most on ball with 6.2 time of possession. But can we have more of that? Will we see more of that? They also brought in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, and now we see that Jones will be starting. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case then. But with the potential decline in KD, I could want to see more of that. But then there's still Beal that also has to be considered. With his contract, he has got a bit underrated for me. I don't know if it's been talked about, but he had a career high from 43%, from 3 at 43%. He also tied his career best from inside the arc at 55%. He had the highest effective field goal with 58%, and a career high true shooting with 60%. Can that also carry on? Is he going to see a change in the role as well? Because all of those three players are better and probably prefer to be off the ball. But as we saw with some of the declines, someone should be pushed in to be in a primary ball handler. Because I'm not sure if I feel good enough just having Tyus Jones making all those decisions and just letting him lead the team in touches and time of possession. But staying on the topic of the three players together, they all love to get their shots in the mid-range. They love working in similar spaces, and that's one of the reasons why the math wasn't mathing in the playoffs, despite all of them shooting efficiently. Here are some of the frequency in the short mid-range and long mid-range. KD was at 31% and 25%. B was at 22 and 17. Booker at 28 and 23. Two of them have over half of their shots beyond 4 feet inside the arc. B was at 40%. So someone will have to adjust. They can't have three players shooting over 40% of their shots in the same areas. And I think that's where Bud will have to figure out a lot with the offense and how that's all going to fit. Now you're bringing in Tyus Jones, just making the decisions. Are we going to just see a more off-ball action, just getting numbers instead of getting the looks inside the paint, instead of mid-range? Can we see a more offense flowing off-ball towards a three-point shooting? Then there's Nurkic. I had some issues with him heading into the season. I didn't think he was going to be a starting level caliber player on a good championship level team. He kind of proved me wrong. They did good with him. They had a 113.3 defense with him on, and that dropped to 116.5 without him. We saw Bud also have an elite system in Milwaukee. He did have Brook, he's a miles better defender than what Nurkic is. But can we expect some level of just improvement and Nurkic being maximised in a right system defensively? Because that's what Bud is good at. So I wonder if we will see even a better Nurkic this year. And I think that's going to be the most curious part of the whole season. How much change and improvement can Bud bring? Because then there's also the point guard experiment. That's what we've heard all year long when it comes to their offense. They did bring in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris. But are they making that big of a difference? Is Jones even a starting level point guard at this point? It looks like they will have him start, but I'm not sure if that makes a big difference. Because he's not a high volume shooter. He doesn't score the ball well. He's a table setter. Just handle the ball, make a right decision. He doesn't turn the ball over, but he's also not the greatest passer. And that's, I think, one of the bigger questions of how they will just figure it out, or if they just if they do go down the direction of using Booker more or Beal as a ball handler and having Tyus Jones off the bench. Finally, will they have anyone else that steps up? There is Allen, who had the best 3-point shooting of his career, where he shot 46% on over 8 threes per 100 possession. It's a simple role, and he was highly effective. Can his role be bigger? Will he shoot at the same rate? Can he also add something more to his game? He will be coming off the bench now, which I think is a big mistake, because he does provide that elite spacing, and when he does get a ball, he will shoot efficiently. That's what I know. If I can buy into the having Tyus Jones over him. But then who else is in the discussion of potentially stepping up? Is it Okogie? Is it O'Neal? Bobo? I have some of the questions about their front court, particularly ones that could guard up. And related to that, can they remain a top defense? They rely a lot on Durant being a rim protector, but that's likely going to drop with age. In 2023, Durant defended 5 shots around the rim, and opponent shot 55%. And that was 9% worse than expected. This year that went up to 58%, and it was only around 5% worse than expected. So he's already showing that kind of decline, and that's likely to continue. And if they can't rely on him being a rim protector, Nurkic isn't the one either. There are big question marks on the defense then. So predictions, I see this team as a 48-53 win team. Their floor is a play-in with a drop-off in their defense and just health issues. With the ceiling, I can see them being a top 3 seed as well, with the offense just clicking and just being as dominant as ever. I can see myself talking myself into that, with the offense just being one of the best. If they can make an adjustment, especially with their shot profiles, embracing more of a 3-point shooting team, even if it's more with Beal, Booker and Durant off ball, that could raise the floor so much for this team. It's still a bit concerning that all of the on-ball play types for Durant has been declining. I wonder if that was just a blip or if it's something that he just will continue. But regardless of what the answer is, I don't think it's going to be reasonable to expect him to be used in that way. So it will likely to fall on Booker and Beal to be the primary initiator, and the question will be if either of them is up to that. I want to say this will likely be Booker's best season of his career. With the run in the Olympics, players usually come back with a different approach, different mindset. So I'm really excited to see what Booker will add to his game, and if he could just put himself in that conversation for the top 10. I still like Beal on this team going forward. He already had one of the most underrated seasons with what he was doing. If there are some tweaks in his game to become a more 3-point shooter, again, I would like this team a lot more. Those are the least of my concerns. The big ones is I don't trust their defense anymore. With both Booker, Durant, and Nurkic, they would have ranked 10th with 140.1, but I'm not sure how confident I am with all of that happening again. This team does have, to me, one of the most unpredictable possibilities. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they did underachieve, or if they could be one of the top seeds in the West. There's a lot that could go right for them, but there's also a lot that could go wrong for them, and they are just as likely.